Is it ethical to tape a conversation with a coworker? Jody Wilson-Raybould's admission she taped a phone call with the clerk of the Privy Council has raised questions on the ethics of taping conversations. And we are joined this morning by Alex Lucifero, partner at Samfiru Tumarkin LLP, to talk more a little bit about this. Alex, good morning.
Good morning, Annette.
So is it legal to record a conversation with your boss or your coworker?
Sure. So as employment lawyers, Annette, we've gotten this question and calls on this issue quite a bit over the past week. It's certainly an interesting topic. To address the legalities of recording conversations, most people are actually surprised to hear that it is completely and perfectly legal to record a conversation that you are personally involved with and participating in.
Okay.
So if you and I are having a conversation and I'm recording this, even without your knowledge or consent, that's a perfectly legal thing to do.
Okay.
So that's okay and above board. What's completely illegal and where we run into problems here is it's actually criminal. It's contrary to Section 184 of the Criminal Code of Canada to record other people's conversations.
Okay.
So if you and a coworker, for example, or you and a manager are having a conversation and I decide to record that, I could be criminally charged for that.
Wow. Okay. So why would somebody want to record a conversation? Where would be the reason for it?
So we see it most often in the employment context when the employee is in a very vulnerable position. Mm-hmm. So, and as is the case, for example, with Ms. Wilson-Raybould, she felt that she was in a toxic environment, she was being pressured, she was being asked to do something that she thought was unethical and potentially unconstitutional. In a situation like that, an employee may decide, and it may be very reasonable for that employee to decide, that they should be recording that conversation.
Right.
Oftentimes that's a conversation with a manager or with a superior where that person feels a level of vulnerability, and when there's a power imbalance between the parties, that's when, and typically as employment lawyers, we might even recommend in some cases to record those kinds of conversations.
So then maybe there's a bigger question about if it's ethical. If it's
Sure.
legal, as long as you're a participant, even if the other person is not aware of the conversation, then it seems to be maybe a bigger question of, is it ethical? Because people seem to feel a little like it's a little icky, if you will, right? That it feels a little dirty, a sneaky or something, that
Sure.
It's just not right. So couldn't there be ethical rules for an employer, for a company to have that it's not allowed?
There absolutely can, and that's a great point. You're right. It does feel a little awkward. It's an invasion of privacy.
Sure.
You certainly, as an employer, you don't want a work environment where your employees fear that they're being audio recorded all the time. That's going to create a state of mistrust and a bit of conspiracy. You don't want that in your workplace. And the ethics are complicated because, as I mentioned previously, there are circumstances where it's actually justified,
yeah,
and where perhaps it's even recommended. But for the most part, and I would say employers could even institute a policy to this effect, for the most part, you don't want to condone or encourage employees to be recording in the workplace. You could certainly put that kind of policy in place. It's always going to be fact and context specific.
Yeah.
And so you can set that general policy. It doesn't mean that, for example, that employee in that vulnerable state, that you can preclude them from audio recording.
Can you be terminated from your job without severance if you are caught recording a conversation, even if it is lawful, that it's a conversation that you were a part of?
It's a great question, and there are previous cases in which employees have been terminated for that reason. Now, those cases are few and far between. It's by far the exception. However, in a case, and you and I could probably imagine a case where recording a conversation, even though it's completely legal, is extremely unethical and a violation of your employment terms. For example, if you're a manager or even a coworker for that matter, and you're trying to take advantage of another employee or create difficulties or problems in the workplace by recording someone else, again, that's contrary to what you can expect an employee to do in the workplace. It's contrary to those norms, and that can potentially lead to termination.
Is there anything you can do if you are in a conversation amongst people and you see someone is recording something and you don't feel comfortable with it? What do you do?
It's difficult. And again, going back to from a legal point of view, there's probably not much you can do, because as long as the person recording is part of that conversation, that's completely legal. There's no real recourse there. Practically speaking, what you can do if you know you're being recorded is withdraw from that conversation.
Okay.
State your position for the record, and so being aware that it's being recorded. But and if you're in the employment context, well, then report that to a superior, report that to HR. Again, that might be problematic for that specific employee.
Alex, great information. Thank you very much. Obviously,
very much,
very
Annette.
timely right now. Appreciate it.
Yep.